We've got more Premier League rulings to talk about in more votes as clubs vote against and for the likes of VAR and closing or not closing, in the case of the outcome, loopholes in some financial regulations. Transfers, of course, to discuss, and some words from Declan Rice to speak about as well. This is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It's incredibly appreciated. I hope you've had a fantastic week so far. Welcome to Friday. It means the weekend's here. It means my holiday is here. I am working today, but as of tomorrow, I will be in Italia. So I am very much looking forward to that and to having a very much needed break and a week away and still producing content for you all. However, tomorrow morning will be the first in a 3-episode special series which kicks off at 8 a.m. tomorrow. There will be some usual 8 a.m. live shows. I'm planning to do some out there, although it'll be 9 a.m. my time, but still 8 a.m. UK time. And so for that reason, make sure you're just aware of when things are dropping. There's always going to be a show, unless I have some ridiculous Wi-Fi issues every day at 8 a.m. It just may be that 3 of the days that I'm away, which will include definitely tomorrow, and then 2 of the next 7 days will be the episodes 2 and 3 of the Dream Window special, which I'll hold the rest of the details for you. But do make sure you tune into that. Should be quite a good listen. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Paul, Jean, Pikahu. We got Morgie and Miley, Brad, Arasilki, Sean, Allison, Vidal, Arsenal FC, Shari, Jose, Matt G, Sweating Merlot, Shiv, Sergio, Stephen, Damien, P Sharp, Amesy, Paul, James, Answer, Harrison, Amira, Runs with Cal, Simple Unity. Plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you as always for tuning in. Appreciate your time. I hope you have a fantastic day and I hope your week's been good to you as well. Let's jump into today's stories though, shall we? And we begin with the Italian national side announcement, which includes our very own Jorginho. We've got Donnarumma, Mere, Vicario as the goalkeepers, Bastoni, Bellanova, Brangiorno, Calfioni, Cambiasso, not that Cambiasso, Damian, Di Lorenzo, Di Marco, Gatti, Mancini, the midfielders, Jorginho, Pellegrini, Fratesi, Folorunsho. Can't say I know who that is. Fagioli, Cristante, Barella, and then the forwards are Chiesa, El Shaarawy, Raspadori, Retegui, and Scamacca and Zaccagni. So very much looking forward to seeing Italy whilst I'm in Italy. Maybe it's a sign. Maybe that's what I'll get in my sweepstake, which I'll learn later on today. The England squad, however, was slightly more controversial, with Jack Grealish, James Maddison, and Harry Maguire all being left out of the squad. Aaron Ramsdale managed to beat James Trafford into the top 3 spots for Gareth Southgate's side. The defenders include the likes of Lewis Dunk, Joe Gomez, Mark Guehi, Ezri Konsa, Luke Shaw, John Stones, Kieran Trippier, and Kyle Walker. Midfielders, we've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, Conor Gallagher, Kobbie Mainoo, Declan Rice, and Adam Wharton. Massive congratulations to him. And then the forwards, Jude Bellingham, Jarrod Bowen, Eberechi Eze, Phil Foden, Anthony Gordon, Harry Kane, Cole Palmer, Bukayo Saka, Ivan Toney, and Ollie Watkins. Some very interesting choices indeed in that squad that we will, of course, be, as England fans, those that are England fans watching, hopefully watching them all the way to the final and beyond and going one step further than they managed 4 years ago, of course, when Bukayo Saka famously, amazing that it's 4 years ago now, famously, of course, missed that all-decisive penalty. But Gareth Southgate doing a respectable thing and making some tough calls. I've been very critical of him. So I've got to hold my hands up and say fair play, Gareth, for making what are the right choices, for sure. Although, not sure why Ivan Toney's there. Declan Rice has been speaking out, of course, as well after... during an England press conference, but after, of course, the end of Arsenal's season. He said, I said straight after the end of Arsenal's season to my mum and dad that the only thing that would get me over not winning the Premier League is winning the Euros with England. On the title race, he says it was really tough to swallow that we, Arsenal, missed out on 2 points. But now there is this beautiful opportunity in front of us to go and do something special with England. And to do that, I think would be one of the pinnacles of football, to win something for your country. There's a long way to go. 7 big games in a tournament, but full focus on that. He says, I think I take a lot from the Man City boys, whereas I've obviously been in my first title race this season with Arsenal and understanding the pressures and the big moments you have to go through. My respect levels were higher, but they went through the roof in terms of City. Winning 4 in a row. I've been in my first title race, and to deliver every week, winning football matches in the Premier League, it's so hard. And they've done that. It's about that mentality, that shift. And we want to take that now into the summer. We have a lot of City boys here, a lot of boys who have played in the big level games. I think we can use that experience and take it into the Euros, which we're confident of doing. So let's see what Declan Rice ends up doing at this Euros. We expect him to start most, if not all, of England's game in the tournament. Now, the Premier League have failed in a bid to close a loophole that allows clubs to use one-off profits from the sale of the likes of hotels, training grounds, and other tangible assets in their financial fair play submissions. A vote which was in favour 11 to 20, backing a proposal to scrap this loophole was sadly unsuccessful because, of course, you need 14 of the 20 clubs in order to make that change. This is from the article on The Athletic, courtesy of David Ornstein. It says the English Football League stopped its clubs from using artificial windfall profits on property sales in 2021 after half a dozen clubs had sold their stadiums or training grounds to themselves in order to avoid breaching the PSR limit on permitted losses. The Premier League considered taking the same action, but its clubs did not feel strongly enough about it at the time for the league to put it to a vote. That changed, however, this season when Chelsea avoided breaching the PSR limit by selling the 2 hotels and car parks at Stamford Bridge to a sister company for £76.5 million. That was enough to turn a £166.4 million loss in 22-23 into an £89.9 million pound deficit for the club. Widespread anger about that transaction forced the Premier League to look at its rulebook again, with the result being the proposal to copy the EFL's prohibition of using such windfalls in PSR calculations. However, the amendment failed because several clubs thought the wording of the ban was too wide. According to people with knowledge of the proposal, it did not clearly distinguish between the type of non-football revenues that clubs believe they should be encouraged to exploit, such as building hotels, houses, or indoor arenas, and the accountancy tricks of selling existing property to yourself. It says that they expect that the Premier League will try and tighten up the proposal again with another vote, but again, it's just chaos at the moment, these rulings, and absolutely ridiculous kind of loopholes that are being exploited. But people have a go at clubs for exploiting these loopholes, but if they exist, can you really have a go at them for doing so? What they've done is still by the rules. They can do what they've done. So can you really be frustrated? You can be frustrated at it, but can you be anything more than that? I don't think so. The frustration should be at the rule makers for not recognizing this was a potential loophole and having not closed it sooner. It is all done and is being done currently within the current set of rules. So you can't describe it as cheating, as some people I'm sure would do. It can't be described as that. Bruno Guimaraes, moving into specific players and speaking about his future, he says, my future, I'm under contract with Newcastle and I'm very happy. I don't know what will happen with financial fair play, but I can say that I'm very happy. It's good to see my name linked to big clubs. It means I'm doing my job well, but I'm not worried. I'm happy at Newcastle. We'll see what happens. It's those 4 words at the end of "we'll see what happens," which you always see attached to players whose futures are certainly not assured. So for any Newcastle fans, and trust me, I know they listen, any Newcastle fans listening, if that comment gave you more confidence, it shouldn't have done. Because if a player was absolutely set and hell-bent on staying at your club, they wouldn't be saying things like, we'll see what happens. We'll be saying things like, I'm not leaving. I'm very happy here. I have no plans to leave this club and I'm very committed to my future here. Not, we'll see what happens. And it's great to be linked to big clubs, which ironically also kind of points out that you don't think the club you're at is the biggest that you could possibly be at as well. So take those comments as and where you will. Last couple of transfer lines, though. Fabrizio Romano suggesting that Benfica, nothing has changed on this front for the Joao Neves link. 120 million euros of the release clause, and it's that or nothing. You are not getting Joao Neves unless you pay, similar to Enzo Fernandez with Chelsea, unless you pay that 100 million euro release clause. And who can blame Benfica, to be honest? They know that clubs will pay it because Chelsea did. So why on earth would they ever need to change their stance on a player that they know they've got loads of talent in and that has a big, big release clause? They don't need to change their stance on it. They can keep him. They don't need the money. They're a very, very, very rich club. They're a very competitive club in Portugal. They don't need to let the player leave. So they don't need to drop the price any lower than that 120 million euro release clause. And just the latest on Benjamin Sesko. I released an article yesterday that some of you may have seen, just kind of discussing the latest surrounding the player. Arsenal's priority, despite all this talk of a striker, remains a midfielder, is my understanding of the situation. That's not to say that Arsenal, of course, won't sign a striker. They want to add a striker, but the priority in terms of what their main focus is on who they're most keen to add remains a midfielder. Sesko is a target. He's on a list, and that's great. But I think there is a lot more noise, perhaps it seems, than the reality of this situation suggests right now. The player wants to sort out his future before the European Championships. That timeline is closing quickly. His release clause in his RB Leipzig contract runs out at the end of this month. There has supposedly been an offer made to Sesko. Sesko, sorry, I should pronounce it better than that. Sesko, of course, has been made a contract offer by Leipzig, which is very lucrative, but he's not signed that. And if he's not signed that at the moment, you get the feeling that a move is probably the most likely. Arsenal, Chelsea, Man United, as we know, are the most keen on the player. But I think that any chance of a deal is still a little bit of a way off. That's certainly the feeling that I've got from contacts I've spoken to yesterday. So I guess it's just one we will continue to cover and bring you up to speed on as and when the updates arrive. But I hope it happens. I hope Sesko is signed. But yeah, at the moment, I think it's still a little way off from any kind of decisive action. Now, you can, of course, continue to win your own special striker signing by winning a signed and framed Thierry Henry Arsenal shirt. There is around just half of the tickets that went on sale, around half are left. Link down in the description for those that would like to get involved in the competition. There's some instant win prizes to get your hands on to in terms of a Gilberto Silva signed Arsenal shirt, a Jack Wilshere signed Arsenal shirt, a Tony Adams signed Arsenal shirt, and a Patrick Vieira signed Arsenal photograph as well. Best of luck to all of you that do get involved. Link, as I say, is down in the description. It is UK only. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, part 2. This is the section of the show, of course, where we jump into the chat box and get your thoughts on different things and answer as many of your questions as possible. Temi kicks us off by saying Sesko is a smokescreen for Isak. What are your thoughts? No chance. Ben says, did you see the clip doing the rounds of TSN's pundit laughing at Saka limping? Some of these journalists need to be named and shamed. This is getting weird and bordering on potential racism accusations. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be able to say that. I haven't seen the clip, so feel free to send it to my way, Ben, on socials. But I've talked at length in unrelated terms about the systemic racism that, of course, does exist regarding the likes of Bukayo Saka, Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho. It does exist, quite frankly. And I saw Aaron Catterson-Reid, former colleague of mine at Football London, now at The Athletic, tweeting about the abuse that the likes of Bellingham and Saka have received in comparison to somebody, in comparison to other players, for instance. I think it's fairly obvious why these players get comparative abuse compared to players who, are white, for instance. So we know that the systemic racism sadly exists within our sport, and it's a problem that needs to be addressed. This isn't me suggesting, of course, that the example that Ben has used is that. This is purely, more broadly speaking, about the issues that we, of course, do still face in the sport. It's very difficult to talk about it without getting comments like this one. Newcastle United clips. I told you Newcastle fans were listening. Says white footballers get the same, if not more, abuse, which is a really naive, ignorant, and just incorrect way of looking at the reality of it. If you want to fool yourself, feel free. But it's incredibly misinformed and uneducated. Cam says, hello, Tom. This is my first time catching the show live, but I've been listening on Spotify for a year now. Question, are we not looking at Simakan or Frimpong anymore? Frimpong's never really been much on the radar, bar kind of an interest a couple of summers ago now. His work at Leverkusen has, catapulted him into a stratosphere of player that I don't think Arsenal are looking at stylistically. He's not really the right back because he's more of a wing back. And Simakan does fit the mold, certainly plenty more. But what I would say is that the links to him last summer diminished very, very quickly. Neil says, I've just finished my A-levels, Tom, and now I can watch a show in peace and stress-free. Well, that's good to hear, Neil, and I hope everything went well for you. Jakob says, it's very hard to predict our transfer window this summer. I mean, we don't know what are Mikel's plans for the number 6 role. Left centre mid, left back, and so on. Let's just trust Arteta and Edu so we can enjoy our holidays. I think that we've obviously got into a position where we've learned, the trust of those guys. We've learned to trust the business at the club, because if you look at the investment at Arsenal and how much is a hit compared to how much, of course, is not a hit, it's overwhelmingly in the hit column in terms of how much investment we've had. When you think about 105 million spent on Rice, big hit. Havertz, 65 million, hit. Ben White, 50 million, hit. Tomiyasu, 20 million, hit. Ramsdale, you could argue, is a hit and we'll probably make a profit on him, even though he's not necessarily playing as much anymore. David Raya, of course, I think we can argue these days is now certainly a hit after winning the Golden Glove and coming away with some fantastic numbers come the end of this season. We don't know if Yuri Timber is a hit yet, but he's shown some great stuff in the little flashes that we've been able, of course, to see of him. Leandro Trossard, hit. Jakub Kivior's come in for 20 million quid and offered, plenty of quality. He started away at the Etihad in a 0-0 draw, of course. So you look at that as a good investment as well for the depth in the squad. Gabriel Magalhaes, hit. It's all the money that we've spent. The overwhelming majority of the investment has proven to be certainly a good thing. Josh says, Tom, you say Sesko. I'm going to get it right eventually. Tom, you say Sesko's potential deal is a long way. I didn't say a long way off. I didn't say that at all. I said it's some way off. I'm saying I'm not expecting it. It's not at like an advanced stage as far as I'm told, Josh. So that's where we're at with the Sesko deal. I mean, let me use the words I exactly wrote in the piece yesterday. Let me see if I can find it. Some way off is what I wrote. I didn't write a long way off. I wrote some way off because it's not an advanced stage at this point in time. A Greek Freak says, hey, Tom, apparently it has come out that Chelsea are looking at Alvarez from City. Does that mean that we are the only ones looking at Sesko right now? What do you think about the signing of Alvarez ourselves? I think it's almost impossible. I don't think City would have any interest in giving us another player. So I'd calm your hopes on that one, certainly. And when it comes to, Chelsea and Alvarez and Sesko, they'll be looking at a number of players. So don't assume that just because there's links to somebody else that it is completely undercut potential links to the likes of Sesko. They are still interested, but they'll be coming up with alternatives and others in case they aren't successful in getting Sesko. Dwayne says, Tom, what type of player do you want for Saka's competition? Technical player like Trossard or more of a direct player like Martinelli? And which player have you got in mind? Well, if you listen to our upcoming episodes on our Dream Summer Windows, you'll be able to hear not just mine, but plenty of familiar faces' thoughts on their signings for the summer. I want to see someone who is, who's got pace, can get in behind, challenges players, takes players on. Xavi Simons continues to be, though, that number one option for me. Chris says, hi, Tom. In regards to PSR, have you seen that Arsenal's financial year runs from the 1st of June till the 31st of May? Which is different to other clubs. We can actually do some business this month. The club, as I reported yesterday, are very well aware of kind of the cycles of the profit and sustainability regulations. They're bearing that in mind when it comes to any business that they do. And it's important that, of course, they do that because they want to remain within the comfortable confines of those rulings and will adjust their strategies alongside it. Nell says, hi Tom, Premier League rules state that we need 8 minimum homegrown players in the first team. With the players suspected to leave, we will struggle to meet that requirement. Players linked are not English. It's not correct. Arsenal have a maximum non-homegrown quota of 17. You don't need 8 homegrown players. You need a maximum of 17 non-homegrown players, which Arsenal are not going to be close to breaching, and we aren't worried about that at the moment. Richard says, how is some way off different from a long way off? They're pretty much synonymous. Well, a long way off would be the long-term future. Some way off would be at some point in the future, but a long way in some ways is quite considerably different, Richard. But if you want to pull hairs, that's up to you, mate. Big says, Tom, how much do you think it'll take from Crystal Palace to part ways with Wharton? He seems massively exciting. I think they'll be upwards in the 100 million brackets, won't they? I think they'll certainly use this situation to help themselves. Ajmal says, hi, Tom, with the profile of midfielders we are linked with, have you ever wondered who in our squad can cover Ødegaard if he gets injured without a drop-off in quality? I think that it is and has remained an area of our team where we do lack quality depth to Ødegaard. The hope is, of course, that Nwaneri could perhaps step into a role and be more competitive for us. And Mikey said, what about Ethan's performances in the under 17s? He's been sparkling and he's been doing very well, of course, for England's under 17s this summer prior to their elimination to Italy. So yeah, let's wait and see. Jakob says it sounds like a Nicolas Pepe description. I assume that's kind of the long way, some way off type of thing. Again, if you're going to quote me, you just use the words I've used. It's as simple as that. Josh says, Tom, is Yusuf Fofana more of an 8 than a 6? I feel we should sign a fixed 6 this summer so Rice can operate as an 8. It depends upon, obviously where we see Rice. I like Rice in both positions. I'd like Arsenal to bring in someone that can score goals, which would make me think that a 6 is not the way forwards this market. And I'd like to see us bring in, a very capable box-to-box midfielder who is threatening. But that option doesn't look so obviously out there, as we discussed in yesterday's show. B6 says, apparently we'd be scouting Wharton for 2 seasons before Palace went for him. Wish we took the risk on him. Muga says, Tom, everybody in the house thinks that you're boring, but you are always the one everybody is watching. Thanks for the great show. I appreciate the semi-compliment, I think. So thanks for that. Ajmal says, we've touched upon that comment. Let's scroll up a little bit more. Chunho says, Tom, do you think that there will be an exodus of players from City this summer? With, of course, the legal situation going on with the Premier League. Is there an ironic admittance of guilt there? I wouldn't necessarily suggest that's the case so openly and without considering legal implications, of course. I think that City are, a very interesting club that we will follow the deal of and follow the processes of this legal action, but I'm conscious of commenting too heavily on it, of course, because of all the legalities, that's the word, surrounding it. Tizer says, hey, Tom, do you think high transfer fees being asked by clubs are now unrealistic due to PSR, as clubs are now balancing their books? To me, the rules are now working to bring down fees. The problem with it, of course, is it's a specific Premier League ruling. So clubs outside of the Premier League aren't affected by profit and scalability rules. They're affected by financial fair play and UEFA's rulings of it and their own leagues restrictions, if indeed they do exist. So I think that, you're in ultimately a position where you're at a disadvantage because you've got restrictions that don't exist elsewhere. So it might bring down fees for Premier League clubs when spending within the league. But when Premier League clubs are trying to buy from outside the league, clubs can still ask for huge, huge fees because they know the Premier League clubs have got that money, and it's as simple as that. Rob says, to be fair to Tom, it's horribly difficult to talk continuously for 45 plus minutes. I used to do a Comedy Circus Fire Street show around the world, and jibber-jabbering for 45 minutes is definitely an art. Well, I appreciate that, Rob. You guys make it a lot easier, rather. You see, we cover some very difficult and hard-hitting topics, rather. Just like this comment raised by Dominic, who says, Tom, well done for covering the racism comments. It's sad that we still need to, but if it's not, then there's no chance of it being addressed. I got a lot of stick for covering it on an NFL show, but it was worth it. And I'm glad that you did cover it, Dominic, because it remains a problem. There are always going to be people out there that are going to turn a blind eye to it, that are going to claim ignorance to it. And in some crazy cases, like we've sadly seen on this show, try to claim that white footballers get more abuse than non-white footballers, which is, uh, absolutely the most absent-minded comment you could ever read. Rather insecure, I think, as well. Abdi Malik says, "Do you think the Newcastle news have increased our chances to get Bruno Guimaraes or Isak from them?" No, I don't think so. GZ4 says that was the plan in terms of seasons before we got him, and he was putting up messy numbers in terms of Vieira. That was, I think Vieira was putting up very good numbers, of course, of Porto, but some deals just don't work out, and that deal so far has not worked out for us. So it's the reality of it. He will either, there's two options. It's obvious, but he will stay or he'll go. I don't think there's a loan. I don't think that's an option. I think he will either, try to be integrated into the squad by Arteta this season, or we will be, just selling him, because there was those reports by the Athletic that he was not impressing in training. Nick says, "I'm wondering whether the appearance of Smith Rowe on the last day of the season was a show of confidence or a last game farewell. I'm hoping it's the first one." Yeah, it's impossible to know which one it was until we get to the end of this summer window. And if he's still here, we know what it was. If he's not here, we also know, therefore, what it was. P Sharp says, "I see Rice going forwards as a marauding 8 now. I reckon 10 goals plus next season. Just to put it into the universe, a Declan Rice hat-trick is also going to happen." I hope you're right. I hope he can prove that he can indeed be a goal-scoring midfielder at a higher level than he's already performing at. And that's definitely got to be something that we do target with him if the plan is to sign a number 6 rather than the number 8. Pratika says, "Is Grealish not making England a cautionary tale for players City want to recruit? He only got 2,000 minutes total and sat on their nice bench for most of the season. Is that a reason why Southgate picked other players?" I think that Grealish just hasn't been very good this season, and I think there are better players than him that Southgate has decided to choose from. I mean, if you have a look at the squads, those forward options, the only one that I'd really swap out for him is probably Ivan Toney. Bellingham deserves to be there. Bowen deserves to be there. Eze deserves to be there more than Grealish does. Foden does. Gordon does. Kane does. Palmer does. Saka does. And Watkins does. So it was a toss-up between Maddison, Toney, and Grealish, I think. He's gone with Toney because I suppose we've only got 2 out-and-out centre forwards in Watkins and Kane. So he's gone for the third striker option instead of a wide player, because we've got Foden who can play wide, Palmer who can play wide, Saka can play wide, Gordon can play wide, Eze can play wide, Bowen can play wide. So, I think we are well stocked. So he's gone for the third striker instead of a however many wide options down we are at this stage. Roy says, "Tom, how's the hay fever today? An air purifier is the answer." I keep getting sent links to these air purifiers. I will be looking at them when I get back from Italy. So thank you for your suggestions. It's a bit better today than it has been over the week. Jonathan says, "I don't find you boring, lads." Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate that. B6 says, "I can't be the only one who sees potential in Vieira. He was excellent in that game against Fulham, and he just needs a regular run out." There's talent there. It's just the application of that talent hasn't materialized in the way that we want. Soup says, "I think it's going to be a 6 because of the issues that we've had with ball progression from deep without Jorginho midfield. I think we'll go for a younger version of him. And that's maybe why Bruno Guimaraes makes sense," which I think is a very astute piece of analysis. Let's look at a comment from Tizer, who says that England defence is crying out for Ben White. Shame the issue couldn't have been sorted out, as we would have had a very attacking team. I mean, yeah, imagine if we'd have been able to have Walker, White, Stones, and Shaw as our back line. I am kind of concerned that there isn't another left-footed defender there that can play left back. That is a bit of a worry. And I think maybe shows obviously the lack of depth. Tyreek Mitchell, I think, would have been a very astute addition to the 32 squad before we then cut it down. So I'm not really sure why Mitchell wasn't given the opportunity, unless he's injured, of course. But I don't really know why Mitchell wasn't given a bit of a chance. Chino says, "Tom, if we try and get a left 8 this summer and play Rice as a 6, who do you think is the realistic one that we could get?" It's the ultimate signing, isn't it? I said before that even though the midfield, I understand, to be Arsenal's priority area of investment this summer, there isn't a standout candidate right now. Bruno Guimaraes would be a great signing, I think, who can play 6 and 8, depending on the opponent you're coming up against. So he'd be the dream pick, I think, but difficult to come up with more names than that. Russ says, "Is Italy a little holiday for you, Tom? If so, who signed this off?" I mean, I don't need to sign it off. I guess this is a situation where I can work for myself on the channel, but I've had it signed off by my proper job, if that's any help to you, Russ. Amber Lee says Branthwaite should have also gone, in my opinion. Not a bad shout. Cam says agreed. The England defence does not inspire me. It's definitely lacking, 100% lacking. Are we there? Are we done? I think we might be done. I think we're coming to the end of these comments on today's show, which is absolutely fine. I'm more than happy to wrap things up. Ben says, "Do you ever see us getting another sister/feeder club besides the Colorado Rapids? And in which league? I'd personally go to a Portuguese or French side if possible." Definitely, there's a chance it could happen, but there is no indication at the moment that that's in the works. If it is, it's very secretive, but we've heard nothing of that so far. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Really appreciate your time, as always. I hope you have a fantastic Friday. Let us know any of your thoughts and your comments on anything that we've discussed today down in the comment section below. And please do drop a like on the video and help us to reach our 1K every single day target. Tomorrow will, of course, be a pre-recorded special at 8 o'clock. But there will be a show for you at 8, and there will be a chat box that you can interact with as well. And you'll see some very, 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 very familiar faces on that show. I don't think I mentioned the 1K at the start of the show, so I'm a little bit conscious now that we may not hit our 1K like target. So if you've not yet hit the like button before you go, please, 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 please do. We don't want to surrender this run of likes before I head away, and it's going to be very difficult, of course, with the pre-recorded shows to do that. So make sure you're telling people in the chat box to press the like button, and make sure we get that up in tomorrow morning's premiered show. Thank you so much for listening. Have a fantastic day. Enjoy yourselves, and I'll be back with you tomorrow morning for a special, and then back probably live as usual on Sunday for a usual live show. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.